So I had a great conversation with my next guest, Angela Shankar. She's a great clarinet player and doubler in New York City. It's interesting, she's found a way to balance teaching and playing while raising three very charming boys. She performs regularly on several different Broadway shows, various chamber ensembles, and she was also the chair holder at Radio City for a couple seasons. And as you can imagine, it's somewhat difficult to raise kids and keep all these things together in New York. And I just find her dedication and journey inspiring and definitely worth sharing. So please enjoy my conversation with Angela Shankar. Thanks. Bye. It's from like Cleveland?
From the burbs.
Yeah, which suburb?
Strongsville.
Southwest
of Cleveland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, what was that like?
It was great. I mean, it was like typical Midwest, like wonderful community, people super nice, great school district, great music program. I went to public school through and through, and yeah, it was a great place to grow up.
Who I know your dad played saxophone. Yeah. Was your mom a musician?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I forgot what
She played clarinet.
Oh, she did?
She played clarinet growing up, and then she also taught clarinet lessons when I was in high school, which was really fun. Although it was a little tough trying to like take a lesson from my mom.
Did you?
And now as a parent with kids that play an instrument, I get it more. I should not be their teacher.
Well, who was your, when did you first play the clarinet, or who was some of your teachers?
So in 5th grade was when they do the instrument demonstration, you pick your instrument, and I waited for that day my whole life. Like I could not wait to play an instrument. I was so excited, I was so ready, and I desperately wanted to play the saxophone. And I waltzed in there ready to play the saxophone, and they were like, no, you got to start on the clarinet. And I was like, but I don't want to play the clarinet, I want to play the saxophone. No, you got to play the clarinet. That's the best way to get started and learn and whatever. And of course now, looking back, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. But then they never let me switch. So, and I remember asking my band director when I was in 6th grade, and she was like, no. And then when I got to junior high, and they were like, no, like we need you, you're a leader on the clarinet. And because I'm such a Girl Scout, I was like, I'm a leader? Okay, I'll play clarinet forever.
Were you taking private lessons right away, or?
No, I didn't take private lessons until I was in middle school. And even then, I was not a great student. I didn't love practicing. I think I also didn't know how to practice. I didn't really understand how to practice. And it was sort of like, you take a lesson, maybe give you something to work on. But it wasn't the most inspiring situation. Also, I wasn't playing anything outside of band at school, and that was kind of easy. It was boring. But I knew I loved it, but it just wasn't, not until I got to high school, and then it was like...
Well, what changed?
I had a different teacher in high school, an orchestra teacher. So we were really lucky that the band program was super strong growing up. So there were, a lot of opportunities within school to play and like different extracurriculars, within school. But then when I got to high school, there was an orchestra, a full orchestra, and you had to audition to be in it as a clarinet player. And we had a fairly young orchestra director, like he'd just come out of college, out of Baldwin Wallace College, Mr. Sieber. And he pretty immediately was like, you're special. Like there's something going on. Like, is this something you want to do? And I was like, yes, I love playing music, but like I don't know what I'm doing. He was like, you need to take lessons from this person at Baldwin Wallace. You need to audition to be in the Cleveland Orchestra Youth Orchestra. And I was like, I've never even heard of that before. I don't even know what that is. And that completely changed the trajectory of my life.
Wow.
From there. And he has since gone on. He conducts in orchestras all over the country. He's like kind of a big deal now.
Oh, really?
But at the time, he was just like this young, out of school guy. But he saw that thing, and I don't know what I would have done had he not really took that moment to say, "Is this something you want to do? Let me help you."
Was there music in the house? Like,
oh yeah,
was your
I mean, like
parents practicing that kind of thing?
Like the music came from my parents, and the support came from my parents. I think at the end of the day, though, they didn't necessarily know what to do to propel me to the next level, like who to take lessons with, where to seek out these other opportunities, like the youth orchestra, things like that. That only if you're in the scene you kind of know what to do. But in terms of support, I mean, I was super, super, super lucky. There was always music playing in the house all the time. Like our house was never quiet. We were listening to music constantly. It was just, a huge part of the identity also of my parents. They both identified very much as musicians and music lovers, and they would go to concerts in their free time. And
your dad was like semi-professional or professional, or I don't know.
Yeah, he had a really interesting story. So he started out as a music major, an oboe player, coming from Cleveland, from this Italian family in Cleveland. He got this full ride scholarship to go to the University of Miami to play the oboe, which my family, they were like, what? But he also played saxophone, and growing up played saxophone in a rock band, and I don't know if you say a funk band, but it was in the 70s, like different styles, whatever. And he really loved that so much, and definitely that was a huge part of his growing up. But I think he was serious about becoming a musician, and he did love the oboe, and he went to school, and he played in wind ensemble with Frederick Fennell, who had come from Eastman down there, and he took theory class with Alfred Reed. So he all these cool. Which of course I didn't know at the time, and later I learned, like, whoa, Dad, that was crazy. And so he was playing oboe and English horn, but playing sax on the side in Florida. So he would play on the cruise ships on the weekend. They would go to Cuba and tell crazy stories about that. But I think at some point he was like, this is not sustainable. I need to do something more stable. So he started studying music merchandising and music business, and worked at Columbia Records for a while. But then he says he suffered from the Italian guilt, being away from his family. And that was it. He packed it all up and went home to Cleveland and got a job working at a TV station. Wow. Completely quit music and met my mom there, and that was kind of it. He picked up the saxophone later in life, just as a way to play again, make a little money on the side. But he really said goodbye to music when he left Florida, and I think that was a regret of his. And so as I was starting to come up and become more serious about music, I don't think I appreciated it at the time, how much it meant to him. Like when I found out I got into the youth orchestra, it was a pretty big deal for me. It was like a pretty defining moment of my childhood. It was like a very competitive thing, and I was just kind of figuring that out. He told me he pulled off. He was so excited. He pulled off on the highway. He pulled off on the side because he was so proud that he started crying. He couldn't drive, and I was just like why? That was really nice, but I didn't totally understand. And for him, that was a moment of my daughter's doing. She's following in my footsteps. I think he was just he was really proud.
Major way to Carnegie Mellon. Yeah. What I'm interested, I guess, is kind of what were you thinking of? Did you want to be an orchestra player? Is that what you were?
I didn't know. I just knew I wanted to be a musician, but I didn't know what that looked like. And I liked playing an orchestra. I loved playing an orchestra, but it didn't really light me up. I would play an orchestra, but I also played wind ensemble at school. I also did chamber music. And honestly, I liked the chamber music and honestly, like taking classes more than I liked playing in the orchestra. I don't know. It just, I enjoyed it, but I don't know. There was something about, because I was definitely in school with people who were like, I will win an audition and play in an orchestra. And I was like, go you. But I don't really love the idea of doing that and like dedicating my whole life to practicing 5 excerpts. I think you do have to really want that thing. And I think I even knew then I don't want that thing. But I didn't know what else a career could look like. And I didn't have really any role models like as professional musicians in the real world doing other things. Like that's kind of it. You go the audition route and you get into an orchestra and that's kind of it. So I think in the back of my mind I knew this, and I knew I loved kids. And I was like, I've never really tried teaching, but I always loved babysitting. I loved being around kids. And so one day in solfege, the chair of the music education department, Dr. Ozeas, came in and talked to us about music education. And I'll never forget that conversation. I remember where I was sitting in the room where the piano was and her talking, and I was like, I want to be a teacher. That's it. She gave her spiel and I was like, sign me up. Like, I definitely want to do this. I think that sounds great. But still, I knew I wanted to play. I wasn't like, okay, I'm going to hang up the horn and go do this. I was like, I want to figure out a way to do both. And what was awesome at Carnegie Mellon is you get a degree in education, but it's a minor. You can't major in education. You put performance first. So you get a performance degree, and then you stay an extra year or semester, depending on how long you want to stay, and you do everything kind of at the end. You do the student teaching at the end. You do whatever guitar lessons, that kind of stuff.
So you got certified at the end.
I got certified.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, smart.
And that I'm so glad that I did, even though I never really ended up using my certification. I did once briefly when I moved to New York because Pennsylvania and New Jersey were reciprocal states. So I taught for a little bit in Bayonne using the certificate, which was amazing. A great way to move to the city and just like get a job quickly. Thanks to Meg Zervulis, who I think you maybe know, or
who?
Don't know. Meg Zervulis.
Yeah, I know who that is.
We were in school together, and she's from Bayonne. And she was like, "There's a degree." I was like, "Yeah, that sounds great."
I've never heard of this, and it's a great idea. I guess my mentality when I was at that age is, because it was like this dividing line of like the education majors and the players.
Totally, yes.
And like, there's like,
yeah,
well, I'm not going to be an education
major. Or
I
if you can't play,
yeah,
then you teach. I mean, that's like a thing, right? And then they give the music ed majors, and they're the ones that like couldn't hack it. Mm-hmm. That's definitely. Thankfully, at Carnegie Mellon, there were so few of us that were doing education. It didn't really feel that way because we all had to play in everything together, and we were like in the same program as everybody else. So it didn't feel that way.
So then you made your way to Eastman. What was that?
Yeah.
What was that like?
I should say, there was an interesting interlude that happened during my student teaching. So that was my 5th year in Pittsburgh. It was great. I did my student teaching first semester, and then I basically did auditions for grad school. And I knew I wanted to get a performance, just to focus on performance in grad school. I was really like, this is the time to do it. I'm gonna just go all in now and get it all done. And I was really serious about playing. And I was doing my student teaching. You had to do an elementary student teaching and a high school. And the elementary student teaching, I worked with a teacher who basically was like, you're a hack. Like, either you're going to play or you're going to teach. Like, there's no way you're going to be a great teacher if you're going to focus on your playing. You have to put your whole life into being an educator if you want to be a great educator. And I heard her, but it was really hard because I was like, but I'm pouring all I have into this experience right now and getting everything I can out of teaching these kids and learning how to manage a classroom and learning how to teach, the art of teaching. But you're so young at that point. It's like, how do you know what you're going to do with your life? I'm just trying to gather all these skills and build my toolbox. And she was basically just like, she basically, when she found out I was taking auditions for performance, she just wrote me off. And that was really interesting. And then I did the student teaching at the high school and had the world's greatest mentor and teacher, Dr. Dell, who just basically was like, I'm going to teach you everything I know and like set you free like a bird, and you're going to do great things in the world. And it was there and in that experience that I was like, I will be a teacher. I don't know how it's going to look. I don't know where I'll be or how I will do this, but I know in my heart I'm meant to be a teacher. And it was from him and from the relationship he had with his students and his dedication to his students and his dedication to his craft. And he was also a clarinet player, and he also went to Carnegie Mellon, so we were kind of chummy about that. But his story was so interesting too. He developed this band program in Peters Township, Pennsylvania, and then he eventually became an administrator. I think he was principal or superintendent. He did he left music and did some fancy administrative thing and then left. He was like, I miss teaching band and teaching orchestra and jazz band. And he left. He went back and he's since retired. But wow. Yeah, he came to our wedding. I mean, just an incredible man who was like, do what you need to do. You want to get a performance degree at Eastman? You're going to be a great musician. You are a great musician. Go on, gather all the skills, do all the things. And a lot of my teaching today, a lot of like the specific things that I do and I say come from him, and I think of him when I do. Wow.
I think it's really fascinating that you just had this idea of, I want a life in music, but you want a wide range of skills.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting.
Yeah, exactly right. And I knew that at Eastman too. And basically you're getting ready to go on the audition circuit, or you audition for or the orchestral audition circuit or the Army bands. And a lot of people were winning jobs with Army bands while I was there. And I kind of knew even more I didn't really want to do that. I just, musically, I was like, I really want to do that. Although I loved playing in wind ensemble and I loved that thing. But I needed a job. Like, I'm getting ready to graduate and I was like, what am I going to do? I guess I'll start taking auditions. Right.
So you did.
I took 2.
Oh, that's it.
I took one in Florida, and it was for a since folded orchestra. It was like the Orlando Orchestra or something. Like, now there is something there, but it folded soon after the audition. But it was for like $15,000 a year. I mean, it's just like, okay, this is like my dream. Yikes. And I went down there, and I want to say like there were 30, 40 clarinets that auditioned on my day. They didn't pass anybody through. So I was like, okay. And that was it. Went back home. And then there was a bass clarinet audition in Detroit. And there were 60 people on the day that I auditioned. And they didn't pass anybody through. And I played fine. I mean, I wasn't like, man, that was the best I could have done. And like, if they didn't want me or pass me through, like, whatever. It was not great. It was just a bad experience.
Yeah.
Everything about it, I was like, I don't want to be here. Even if I win the job, I'm like, I don't even think I want the job. Like, everything about it was bad in my mind. But it was great because I was like, I did that thing. I don't want to do that thing. Okay. I'm done. And I did it. And now I know for sure. Kudos to the people that like thrive in this situation. I will say, like, going into the Radio City audition, different experience, I think, because it was all these different instruments. So it wasn't like the Mozart concerto, and it wasn't like Mendelssohn. It wasn't like all the same things. It was somehow wildly different in scope, and that made it fine.
Is there anything that you feel like to prepare for this kind of life in music that colleges could or should do differently?
I have so many thoughts on this. I think most universities in the way they teach music are very well intentioned, but I think that they're necessarily very effective in terms of like living a life, either in music or like with skills to like do your taxes, for example, build a business, build a website, when I was in school, now this was a long time ago, there was nothing like that. when I was at Eastman, there was a fairly new program called the Arts Leadership Program, and they were offering classes that were sort of like life skills as a musician, or as an artist. And, you know, you had to like opt into this program to do it. And I'm so glad I did, but not a lot of people, there were like a handful of us that did it.
Right.
And like how to be an entrepreneur, how to do these things. Yeah. And I hope that those kinds of classes are integrating their way more into the landscape of curriculum, but I don't know. So like a lot of very useful technical skills that you learn. But as far as preparing you for your life as an artist, I felt very underprepared.
You moved to New York.
Yeah.
What brought that decision on?
So it was because of my friend Whitney Gardner.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Oh.
So she started in the Pocket. And
She did?
Yeah.
This is 2008 or something?
So
7?
I'm not sure exactly what year she started it, maybe 2005 or 6.
That's right. That's right around when I met her then.
Yeah, right.
Oh, that's interesting.
And so I knew she had this company. And the ethos of the company is that it's a collective of teaching musicians. Like everything we've talked about so far, basically. Like musicians, you're a musician. You play, but you teach. Like you can do both. And the idea is you teach privately, your own studio or whatever. You charge what you want to charge. You teach where you want to teach. But we all come together for recitals for our students, for events for each other, to support each other's careers and things like that. So as a collective. And I was really excited by that idea, that prospect. And I had come down to visit her just as a friend in New York several times. She was living in Williamsburg. And just fell in love with the city. Like, this is a great place. I met so many musicians. There were a lot of musicians that had come from Pittsburgh, from Rochester. So I already knew, when I decided to move, I made a list.
Yeah.
All the people I knew in New York, there were 27 people, I remember. And I called all of them.
Good.
Yeah, well, you gotta hustle, right? I mean,
Wow.
man.
What a great idea.
Pound pavement. You have to live in the city. I moved here without a job. I left Rochester. I rented a car one way. I had a suitcase and my clarinet, my bass clarinet, and that was it. That was crazy. Yeah, I don't know that I could do it today, but I certainly had the gumption for it at that time.
And when you're pounding the pavement, what does that mean?
Oh my God. I reached out to every single person I knew. I took every gig I possibly could. The night I arrived, I walked across the street to the Italian restaurant on 92nd, or I guess I was on 92nd, on 93rd Street, called Autumnelli's, and manager Joe was there, and I was like, I want a job. And he was like, all right, come back tomorrow. I'll pay in cash. I was like, great. So I waited tables at Autumnelli's. That was my first restaurant job in New York, and it was great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Slid your driver's license across?
Master driver's license. Although somebody who worked there was like, can I have your social security number? I was like, so that they could use my social security number.
Oh.
Yeah, I was like, I don't really feel comfortable. But yeah, I just went. Oh my God, I took every gig. There was like this teaching company like in Westchester, and I was like, sure, I'll do it. I'll rent a zip car, and like go up and oh my God, it was nuts. But until I found my footing, which took a long time, I just tried to meet as many people as I could. Play as many things as I could.
And then when did you join Whitney's? Was that right away? You were decided to...
Yeah, that was right away, which was awesome. So I already had a built-in community of musicians that were there to support me. And like, oh, here, do you need a student? Here's this person who's looking for a clarinet student. And so that definitely helped. But it took a while to build my studio and like figure that out for myself. Like, where am I going to teach and how am I going to do this and what's that going to look like? And I was also teaching in some private schools. Like there was a private school I was teaching at in Hoboken for a while. funnily enough, was elementary music. It was like a part-time job. It was perfect for me. It was
that's great.
awesome. So I ended up using those skills as an elementary general music teacher, which I thankfully learned from a good teacher, though emotionally damaging. But I did use those skills, and it was great because I think I taught maybe 2 or 3 days a week. I don't remember now. Worked with some wonderful students. I was like in the mornings, and that they actually provided health insurance for part-time teachers, which was pretty remarkable. Wow. It was a really great private school. And then I would freelance back in the city. It was great.
And
but the Read to Me came through Matt Aubin and Chelsea Symphony.
Oh, okay.
So he discovered these reed trios of Fernande, and then basically called on us in the orchestra and was like, "Can we do this? Can we put these together? Basically bring them to life."
Oh wow!
Really
So
cool.
so he found those trios. Were they not published or something?
No, they were handwritten manuscripts found in her grandson's basement or attic or something like this. We basically like rescued all this music because her family was like, they're not musicians, like we don't know what to do with this. All these handwritten scores. So we brought them back home, and he and Melissa Kritzer, the bassoonist in our trio, put them into Sibelius, and just poured over them for hours trying to decipher these tiny scribbles. And then there weren't a lot of musical markings, so we had to figure out like what was her intention. How do you think she would want this, and eventually we published and recorded. We recorded almost all of them, all but one, only because that was discovered after in a library, like in Belgium somewhere. And some of them, thanks to Matt, have been published through Biodos, French publisher.
Who was Fernande Decruck? We should mention that.
Yeah. So she was a composer, French composer. The majority of her music was written 1920s. She died in the 1950s. Story wasn't really well. She was recognized at the time as being a very prolific composer. She wrote reed trios for basically the first reed trio, Trio d'Anche de Paris, the first reed trio ever. They would play her music on the radio. They would play her music at every orchestra concert in Paris, and she would improvise on the organ, improvise concerti on piano, and all this. She was just a phenomenal musician and treated as such when she was alive, but when she died, everything kind of died along with her. She was married to a musician. He was a bass player, and he eventually won a job with the New York Philharmonic. They came over here for a while, and she wrote over here. He also played saxophone. So anytime that there was like saxophone in the orchestra, he would just like move from the bass section to the saxophone section, play the sax or whatever. But he was a publisher. And so he published all of her saxophone pieces. So she wrote a saxophone sonata. So that's like the one thing people kind of know of hers.
Yeah. It's
and
a beautiful sonata.
It's gorgeous. Well, that's how her music was discovered, was because Matt was sitting on a jury, and I think it was like at Washington State, and someone played the saxophone sonata, and he was so taken by it. He was like, "This is gorgeous. I don't know it. Who's she?" And I like looked her up and was like, "Nobody, like, what happened to all of her music? She wrote all this music. What happened to it?" And so he eventually like chose to study her and use her work as his dissertation, and went to France. He's very close with her family now, and basically took all of her music back to the States and was like going through all of her music.
Wow.
So the reed trios, like I think there's like one recording from the radio from that time that you can listen to, and it's so interesting. So I mean, the sound quality and just like the interpretation of the style, and it's wild. It's really cool.
Was it like vibrato and?
Oh yeah, totally.
That's interesting.
But yeah, it was like tragically her husband left her.
I didn't know that.
Kids.
Oh.
So she had to fend for herself and the family.
And she stayed here in the States?
She had to move back to France. And so she started teaching at like wherever she could. I think she was teaching at the Paris Conservatory, and then she like was teaching in Toulouse, I want to say. But it was very much like she just needed to make money. So she's just like churning out as much as she could so she could support her family. yeah, pretty tragic stuff. And then during World War II, she was still performing, and so people had thought she was would be a Nazi sympathizer because you weren't supposed to be playing music at that
Oh.
time, but she did, and it's unclear. It's like she just needed to make money, but it's really fascinating
Yeah.
stuff.
Ooh.
And then she like had a stroke when she was like in her early 50s,
Ah.
and then she died like pretty shortly after that.
Oh,
But yeah, it's like this
right.
like died of a broken heart kind of
Oh.
thing. Yeah, and all her music is really sad. It's like so beautiful, but it's so sad.
There is a melancholy. Yeah, I guess I don't know that much. Where can we find your recording of it? Or do you have
Yeah,
like
we got it on Spotify. We've got it on like Apple Music. My dream is that we can go to France someday and play this music for her family.
Please do
That
that.
is my dream.
That's a
Her
great idea.
son is still alive, but he's like in his 80s, I want to say.
Mm.
I would love to do that somehow. Yeah.
Like some technical clarinet things. Like
Sure.
what are you playing? Like what instruments are you playing?
I am playing my bass clarinet is a Buffet Prestige that I bought used when I was in grad school. And it was kind of cool because the person who was selling it was basically quitting music. I mean, that's sad, but they were going to law school and very excited about that. But they had my same teachers. So my teacher from Pittsburgh and my teacher from
Oh,
Rochester, which was really cool. So it kind of felt like it was meant to live on and go on. And it's been such a great horn.
and you were kind of in college. You were focused on bass clarinet more than B flat clarinet. Is that right? Or
In grad
on
school.
grad school?
In
Yeah.
grad school. I mean, I just fell in love with the instrument. I never played one
Mm.
until grad school. I
Wow.
think. I don't think I ever played it in undergrad. No. Um, yeah. And I just fell in love with it right away. So for wind ensemble, I was like, can I please play it in wind ensemble? And just, yeah, absolutely loved it. And I studied with Robert DeLutis, who's just an amazing bass clarinetist and teacher and super inspiring. And he helped me find this horn, which is great. And he actually came to see the Christmas Spectacular show last season, which was like really, really cool to have him there and like see the bass clarinet up there. I don't know, it's just after 20 years.
Does he live in the
Almost.
city or did he drive
No, he
down?
came up. I think he had a gig like in Princeton or something like that, and came up. So that was really meaningful. And my clarinet is a Tosca.
Oh, right.
Got a zoom barrel on there.
Yeah. What's the mouthpiece?
BD5 Van Doren mouthpiece. To be totally honest, I've never really been that into gear or horns or I don't know. I just all I care about is sound.
Mm.
And I'll do whatever it takes to get the sound in my ear that I want. Which
That's such a great sound. How do you work on sound? How did
I
how
always
do you get
have
better at
this
sound?
like concept of what I want, like a very strong concept of what I want in terms of color. And I just kind of experiment until I hear it. And so I go through a lot of reads.
How do you get a concept of what it is? What is that?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I mean, maybe it comes from listening to a lot of different recordings and deciding like, oh, I like this, I don't like this. But I always strive for a really pure sound, a really like focused sound. And as I get older, honestly, as easy of the sound as possible. I don't want to work so hard. I don't want something that's really resistant. I want something that like blows freely but still has a really centered sound.
Like who are some of your favorite sounds on the clarinet?
Oh,
and bass clarinet too.
Yeah. For clarinet, I mean, I was taught in the very classical way, right? So, like the Robert Marcellus sound, like
especially
that,
being from Cleveland,
from Cleveland,
right?
of course, like that is glorious
Mhm.
sound for me. Just that is it. That's like the pure, beautiful, clean sound. That sounds like a voice. It doesn't sound like a clarinet. Um, And for bass clarinet, to be honest, I don't really have like a concept of bass clarinet sound. I always approach the bass clarinet like a clarinet. And that was one of the things that I learned from Robert, and then that people have told me since, which I would take as a compliment, like, oh, you sound like the bass clarinet sounds like a clarinet. It doesn't necessarily sound like a bass clarinet, but it rings like a clarinet. Although when we like dig into some of the lower stuff, I definitely really enjoy that and like get into that in a beefy way, which I really like. But and the same with the E flat clarinet. I approach it like a clarinet.
I guess so, yeah.
And I try to keep like a really warm, round tone.
What kinds of things do you practice daily? Or
in a perfect world, oh, there's so many things I wish I could practice daily.
Or just to keep things going, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if I had all the time in the world and I didn't have kids and I could really like practice every day, yeah, there are like, oh gosh, like the Jean studies. I wish I could play those every day. I love those. Like Behrman scales, the Stark articulation studies, like all those method books, all those books are so great and just keep you really in beautiful shape. In reality, I mean, in between students, sometimes I'll like grab a book off the shelf and play a little bit. But I just do long tones. I play with a drone just to like practice intonation and things like that.
When you say long tones, what does that mean? Like, are you just playing diatonically, notes in the scale, holding notes, and trying to match the intonation? Do you play chromatically, or is it kind of diatonically, or
sometimes
is there a method, I guess?
I try to like switch it up so it doesn't get so boring, because it's so boring. But it's so important. And when we have limited time to play and to go through reads and test all this stuff, that's like for me the most important thing. And to just keep, I do like the 5-note David Weber slow warm up. You know that one?
No.
Chromatically, like up 5 notes, down 5 notes, then you hold that lowest note. Make a crescendo, diminuendo. And that's like the one thing I have all my students do from beginner to advanced professional level.
And that's with a drone?
I practice it with a drone, but you don't have to practice it with a drone. I just set the metronome to 60 and then go slow and hold on for dear life, and then you go up chromatically.
Okay.
Yeah.
Articulation exercises. Do you work on those? You do?
Sometimes. I also am grateful of the 1,000 hours I spent in school practicing them.
Okay.
Because it's there.
Okay.
Like I have a pretty fast tongue from that time. I'll like work on it a little bit if I have something coming up with a lot of articulation in there. But dang, I worked really hard on that in school. I did not have fun in college. I practiced a lot. I regret that. I definitely have regrets. I wish I had more fun in college. But I will say every once in a while when like a really fast articulation passage comes up and I can just play it, I'm like, oh, well, I spent all the time working all that single tongue stuff. Oh my God. Yeah.
So you think it, like I had a clarinet teacher once that told me, and I love this guy, he's passed away, but he always had a slow tongue. And he was a professional clarinet player, and he basically, in so many words, says you either have a fast tongue and you can do these amazing virtuosic things, or you can't. So in my brain, I was like, why am I killing myself trying to like do these articulation exercises when
I don't know that that's true.
I don't know if that's true.
I don't know that that's true.
He was like,
I don't think I had
75 years old, and he was.
When I started.
Oh yeah.
In fact, I was anchor tonguing. Like I had my tongue was like in the wrong part of my mouth. I had to like retrain myself.
Yeah.
This was when I was in high school. And boy, that was brutal. So I had to like retrain my tongue where to go.
Right.
And then, yeah, just.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I work with my students on articulation a lot. Oh yeah, but like I keep them honest. I'm like, okay, we'll for example do like a scale or whatever, and I'll have them tongue the first note of the scale for like 4 beats of 16th notes, like going up chromatically.
Okay.
Like we click up the metronome every week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. But you got to keep your students honest, because if you're like, work on articulation, they're like, okay, and then whatever. But if you're like, okay, next week we're gonna do it at 112.
Oh,
and then the next time we're gonna do it at 118. You really gotta work on it. But for me, it's not the tongue, it's the airspeed. If your air is slow, your tongue is gonna be sluggish. So the more, if I get like bogged down with an exercise, I like stop what I'm doing and I kind of shake it out, and then just think of like using faster air. And then it always like, maybe I just need a break. I don't know, but it will work.
Yeah.
It will work. Yeah.
I'm gonna practice articulation. All right, I'm going back. All right. In the Pocket is still going strong. Are there
still going strong?
Just so impressed by that organization.
Thank you for joining us back in 2019. That was actually a really meaningful experience for my students. So we had a clarinet choir, and Aaron came and joined us, which was really
it was so fun,
amazing. There were like 10 of us, or maybe more, I don't remember. But it was all of my clarinet students of varying levels.
Well, that's another thing I love, is it's not just kids. It's like you have adults and
right now I have more adult students than kids.
I think that's awesome.
Which is amazing. It's great. I love working with adults. It's
because everybody, I mean, not just kids are interested, right? And you can have a life in music as at any age.
Yeah, exactly. And for, I would say, most of my adult students, they have flourishing careers, doing all kinds of wonderful things, and music is their way of of self-expression, of just something fun to do, and they're really talented, and it's really exciting to have these salons that we post every couple of months as a performance opportunity. So we have one coming up at my apartment, and 3 or 4 of my students are playing solos, like with piano, and it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be awesome. Really, I'm super, super excited about that. And I'm going to play flute, which I'm really excited about. So it'll be my first time like performing as a soloist on the flute.
Aww.
Which that's also the idea of the salon and of like these in the pocket events, especially for adults. Like, it's a safe space for you to perform, to get the experience doing something that maybe you've never done before. We have composers come and like test out new things. One of our members is a classically trained opera singer. She's unbelievable, and like wrote a song and like is learning how to play the guitar. And it was so funny. I mean, when you hear her sing, her voice is just like unbelievable. But to see her like so vulnerable like that, like, this is the first time I'm doing this. This is really scary. It's like, that's the place to do it. It's like a really warm environment. Everybody's there to support you, and it's really an awesome way to come together for music. It's great. For me, that's what it's all about. That's what it's the connection. It's using music to bring people together. It's that special sauce.
Well, you mentioned the flute. Let's talk about, so there's been a shift in kind of some musical goals. You want to talk about that?
Total shift in musical goals. It's so crazy. During the pandemic, I basically, like, I don't want to say I quit, but kind of quit. I was like, I don't want to play it anymore. I just was in a pretty dark place. Living in New York during COVID, especially for those first 6 months, was pretty rough. I had 3 young kids. Oh gosh, how old was Mateo at that point? 6. So 3 kids, 6 and under. It was pretty brutal. And my husband Umesh was working pretty crazy hours.
And you were had to be on Zoom.
School,
right?
Zoom school. I mean, forget even Zoom school. It was just like taking care of these kids in an apartment that we couldn't leave. Like, we couldn't go outside. We couldn't do anything. And I just was like, the idea of playing clarinet just did not appeal to me at all. And at some point, after not playing for so long, and obviously no concerts to prepare for or to even think about, honestly, I didn't even miss it. I was like, I think this is my life now. I don't know. No, pretty dark. Maybe we should cut that. It's true. It's totally true. It's totally true. It was a tough time. It was a really tough time. And then my friend Maria, who I've played a lot of chamber music with, she's a percussionist based in Boston, and composer. She had a concert series happening there, or I should say, this concert series invited her to be a part of their project. It was called the Celebrity Series of Boston, and they were doing these Zoom concerts. So this is, I guess, in 2021. And she invited me to play with her. And I was like, this is perfect. I'll have something to play. I love playing with her. It's like my favorite kind of playing is like chamber music. It was like with her, with a vocalist, with a cellist, just like really awesome. And so I brought the clarinet back out again. And that's when I just like really came to love the clarinet again. Thank goodness, because boy, I could have gone the other way. And I just started playing these long tones and just was like, I don't know. I think also I burned out. I burned out. I don't know that I realized I burned out, but I burned out. And that break was really good for me. And so coming back to playing, it like revived me in a way that was really special. And then after I came home from that concert, which was just this amazing experience, I was like, what am I doing? What do I want to do? Like, I don't want to do the audition thing. I was freelancing, but I wasn't really playing gigs that I loved. I mean, they were sometimes awesome, sometimes not. But, you know, at that point, Marilyn had already moved, so our trio wasn't really doing as much as we were before. That was really keeping me going. I loved working with our trio so much. So I really had to like sit with that and think, you know, what's next? What am I doing? And I thought about like when am I most happy playing music? And for me, it is like without question, it's like when I was playing in like the pit orchestras, when I was in college, when I was in grad school, and even when I was here in New York, just like playing operas, playing musicals. I just love, and I think it's similar with chamber music. It's like you're part of telling a story in a way that is really special. And I love the collaborative nature of being part of something bigger. I don't know. I love musical theater, and I love jazz. And it always made me so sad that like I could just never do it. I'm a professional musician, but I can't play music. I don't know. But really, like I can't play Happy Birthday in all 12 keys without making a mistake. Like I'd have to look at the music. I could look at the music and I could play it really fast in all 12 keys if it's all written out for me. But I can't do it by ear. Yeah. I just wasn't trained that way. And that's also like going back to how music is taught in schools. I do think everyone should be taught to improvise in school. I think from when you start learning an instrument, you should learn how to improvise. But I was, oh my God, like even just saying the word, I'm like, oh, it's like terrifying to me. But something inside was like, you know, you really want to play musical theater, like you got to learn how to play these other woodwind instruments. And sort of separately, the idea of playing the saxophone, like as we talked about, like I always wanted to play this. I would love to do that. I really want to do that. And the idea of learning jazz, even just as a novice, sounded really exciting but really scary to me. But I was determined and ready and in the right headspace for it. And that's when I called you. And I was like, help me. What do I do? Am I crazy?
No.
Like, is it too late? Is it, you know, am I nuts? Where do I even start? And thanks to you, you picked up my saxophone and just helped my literal dream come true. Amazing. And I'm still, you know, on the journey in a major way and learning as I go. And
I mean, we're all on the journey.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I still feel like that on clarinet. Like there's a lot to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was it like to find yourself kind of fulfilling this I don't know, this dream?
Total dream.
Yeah.
I took this audition with zero expectations, and just a whole lot of heart because I poured everything into that audition. I've never worked so hard for anything in my whole life. I was playing like close to 10 hours a day.
Hmm.
And it took a village. Like it took my mom, it took our babysitter, it took everybody. It took Umesh literally like holding my hand when I was just like, I can't do this. What am I doing? What am I doing? Like every time I go to pick up the flute, I'm like, I don't play this. This is not my instrument. What am I doing? He's like, yes, you do. Yes, you do. So I'm so grateful to him and to my family for helping me through that time because yeah, it was really hard. I think I probably played like 20 mock auditions for different people just to have the experience of doing it. And I never thought in a million years that I was going to win that audition. Just based on like evidence, like I, you know, like obviously new to all this stuff, but I will say with that, the saxophone solo that I played, the Lesser Young solo, I totally channeled my dad, and that was it. I knew the sound I wanted. I knew I just had to capture the soul of the sound, and technique be damned. I mean, I did my best to play with good technique, and I think my sound concept and style concept just took over, and I just kind of did it. And I'll never forget after I finished playing that solo, Fred from behind the screen went, "Yeah." And I remember thinking in that moment, no matter what happens, like, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe that happened. And I got like a positive response and like I did that. I did that. I just played the saxophone. What is happening? I did that. So that was really cool. And then of course terrifying because the next year I auditioned, he from behind the screen said nothing the entire time. So I was just like, better. I am better. I'm a year better. And like he said nothing the whole time. I was like, oh my God. But then anyway, you never know behind those screens.
I know
what's going on behind
Are
the
they
screen.
even there?
Yeah.
But
yeah,
then,
it's
then
been a dream.
from
It's
that,
been a total dream.
you're subbing on other shows now,
Yeah.
and
I'm
it's moved forward.
really lucky.
Yeah. What's that feel like?
Yeah. It feels amazing. And I'm definitely just super grateful. I have to mention Dave Nolan by name. Like he really set me up for success. He brought me in to start studying at NJCU, and I didn't stay for very long because of Radio City, honestly, and I just was too busy doing other things and getting other work, so I wasn't able to stay. But he brought me in and was like, I'm gonna help you and give you the sound you want and get you where you want to be, and he did. And he brought me into Music Man as a sub.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And that, I'm going to talk about a dream come true. That was just an experience I will never forget. And also, I didn't feel like I don't deserve to be here. I didn't feel like I'm not ready. I'm not. And this was flute. This was soprano saxophone. You know, these were instruments that I wasn't as comfortable with. Obviously, as clarinet, though there was a lot of the clarinets or 3 clarinets on that show. But
yeah, seven woodwind players. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
6.
6.
Think, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not sure. Big section.
Big section.
Yeah. But had the pleasure of playing with you there.
We did.
Which
was so fun.
So much fun.
Yeah.
That was like definitely a like full circle moment. Like
totally.
helped me get started, and here we are, and we're actually like making music together, and
that
was really awesome. And there I met a lot of wonderful musicians, and I met Alden Banta there, who just is such a phenomenal musician. Oh my gosh. And he brought me in as a sub to Camelot.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I'm just like forever grateful for, and met a lot of people there, wonderful people there, and just feeling embraced by the musical community, and as one of the musical community, and not like just this outsider, like, let me in, you know.
Well,
wonderful things have
where do you
happened.
see yourself in 5, 10 years?
Um, in 5 to 10 years, I mean, I just think about my life looking so different with my children being 5 to 10 years older.
Mm.
They'll all be in school. I mean, they're all in school now, but I'm still very much a part of their life. Their day to day, they're sick all the time. I'm picking somebody up from school. Like they're in school, but like somebody's always home. I hope in 5 to 10 years that they'll be thriving in school, doing their thing, and I will have more time to practice those etudes we talked
Yeah,
about,
right.
to really dive into the jazz stuff, to
Mm.
really, you know, improve my technique on flute, get faster technique. Because right now I'm working so much on sound, and I just don't have the minutes to get the technique
Mm.
faster
Yeah.
yet. But I know it will come, but I need the time to do it, and I don't have the time to do it right now. So I'm doing my best, and I'm, trying to be very realistic about my time and what I can put in a meaningful way. And I do think in 5 to 10 years will be my golden period of growth. That said, I I mean, for the next 5 years, I intend to continue doing what I'm doing and
Hmm.
working my ass off and keep practicing and hopefully playing more. I mean, I would love to continue playing shows. It's like my literal dream come true. So I hope that continues.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, just I would love to feel more at home on these doubles.
Where do you draw inspiration from?
Going to hear colleagues play,
Mm.
sitting in sections with phenomenal colleagues is so inspirational to me. Um, and honestly, people that are just great at their craft, even away from music, great
Mm.
chefs
Mm.
are really inspiring to me. Great, like Umesh, honestly, is a huge inspiration to me. My husband, he's
Mm.
a software engineer at the top of his field, and he works so hard, but he's so dedicated to what he does. He cares so deeply about what he does. He's so freaking talented. He's just, I am inspired by him in a way that I bring to my horns.
Oh,
So, yeah, not to be too cheesy, but
I love
pretty
that.
cheesy, but true, but actually true. And we share a wall when we're working, so I can hear him in these work calls. Every once in a while, I'll like try to listen. I don't understand anything he's saying. It's like he's speaking a foreign language. I have no idea, but it is super impressive to me.
That's funny.
And yeah, and then I feel bad because I'm like playing flute, like a B flat scale on the flute, and I'm like, sorry.
What would you tell a younger version of yourself, or maybe somebody that's similar to you, or um, some advice?
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of touched on this a little bit. Like, I wish I could go back and tell myself in college to not work so hard.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Hmm.
I killed myself.
Hmm.
I worked my tail off, and I'm grateful for that time, and it was time well spent. Um, I didn't need to get a 4.0. Who
Hmm.
cares? When you're auditioning for grad school, they don't care about your GPA. They're listening to your audition. I even knew that at the time. But somehow I was just like, I've got to get a 4.0. I've got to like ace all my classes. I've got
Hmm.
to be the top in my class. I've got to get all the awards. I've got to, and for what? Like my parents weren't putting this pressure on me.
Wow.
So where that pressure came from, I don't know. I mean, I'm total type A, absolute perfectionist, and I I've learned some things recently that I do wish I could tell my younger self, which is excellence, not perfection. Strive for excellence.
Hmm.
Perfection will kill you. It will, that's what leads to burnout, and it did for me, for sure, lead to burnout. But striving for excellence can be really meaningful and really important too. And I think,
And they're not the same
especially,
thing,
no, they're
right?
not. They're not the same thing. And I think it really applies to like playing a show, for example. You're gonna make a mistake. There's, like Wicked. I'm learning Wicked right now. It's like almost a 3-hour show. There's a million notes. There's a million cues, there's a million solos, there's a lot going on. It's an awesome book. I'm going in next Thursday for the first time. I'm going to make a mistake. I'm sure I'm going to make a mistake. I'm human. But it's like, if I strive for perfection and I make a mistake, I might collapse. It might, you know, I might focus on that, or I don't know. I don't even want to think about it. But if I strive for excellence, if I strive for really bringing it in the moment, I pretty much have the show memorized now. And if I can just channel all of that into watching the conductor, listening to everything that's going on around me, and just doing my part to fit in a way that is part of the small puzzle piece in the big puzzle, that is excellent. But if it's perfection and I'm just like trying to grind it out, like that is not successful. I can't, that's not, nobody wants that.
Yeah.
So I do think like striving for excellence helps take some of the pressure off this perfectionism that I definitely battle with. So that's one thing. And also just like taking care of myself. I wish I took better care. I'm doing a better job of it now. Like really prioritizing sleep and exercise and diet and like trying to really take care of myself. And this is also from just being a parent. Like you're just depleted all the time. And at some point I was like, I'm not a great parent right now. I'm not a great wife right now. I'm not a great musician right now. I'm not great at anything because I'm spread so thin. It's just, it's impossible. It's impossible to be perfect at all the things.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Angela, for all that, and thank you for dropping by. And if you like this, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you would like to reach out, I would love to hear from you. Take care.